Assalamualaikum and good day everyone. I would like to thank you all for coming to this meeting. As you all have read in the memo that my secretary have put out, this meeting's agenda is to discuss our company's financial position and performance. I have invited two bank representatives, Mr. Yazid and Mr. Hafi from Untung Bank, to evaluate our eligibility for long-term financing for the company. As the CEO of the company, I have discussed with the shareholders of our company's biggest project this upcoming year. We are going to be the main sponsor for the 2021 PUBG Mobile Global Championship and also upgrading our services to our beloved customer. I believe long-term financing is the correct approach to this project. To proceed with this meeting, our accountants will present our company's financial statements. However, one of our accountants, Mr. Nabil, has tested positive for COVID-19. He will not be joining us this meeting as he will join us through video call.
Thank you to Mr. Hafiz, our CEO of the company. I am Iskandar Zunanis, an accountant for this company, and now I will continue to explain about our company's statement of profit or loss and make a comparison between the current year and the previous year. So our earning before tax for the 2020 is 1,333 million, while the previous year is 1,080 million. It has increased as much as 1,153 million. For our profit for the financial year, for the current year is 1,330, while our previous year is 1,078 million. So far, we can show an improvement for our statement of profit, which is a very good thing that can benefit our company. And that's all for me.
Thank you, Mr. Iskandar. Now I'm going to explain more on the statement of financial position as at 31st December 2020, which as previously mentioned was split between Maxis Group and Company. Starting with the group total non-current asset, which is at now worth RM 19,110 million ringgit. This is quite short compared to last year's RM 19,337 million ringgit, with the difference of 227 million ringgit. However, for the company's non-current assets, this year it's RM 25,122 million is better than last year's RM 25,119 million, showing a 3 million ringgit increase. As for the total current assets for the group, it is RM 2,822 million, which is also quite short compared to last year's RM 2,986 million, with RM 164 million ringgit decrease. Nonetheless, the company current assets increased from the last year's 237 million ringgit to 252 million ringgit, with a 15 million raised. All in all, making the total assets for the group this year is RM 21,932 million, as for last year's RM 22,323 million, while the company total assets this year is RM 25,374 million, with it is improvement on last year's 25,357 million ringgit, making the company asset increase by 15 million ringgit. Now for the current liability for the group, it shows that the amount is RM 4,461 million this year, less than the last year's 5,760 million ringgit, making the liability lessen for a good 299 million. As for the company's current liability, it is the same throughout both years. The net current liability for the group this year is around 1,639 ringgit, which is lesser than last year's 2,774, a great decrease in liability. For the net current assets for the company, it is RM 250 million this year, which is 15 million higher than last year's 235 million. The total non-current liability for the group this year is RM 10,421, which is higher than last year's 9,562. The net assets for both company and group are the same as equity. The equity for the group this year is 7,050, which is 49 million ringgit, increase from last year's 7,001. For the company, it is 25,372 million, which is an increase of 18 million ringgit compared to last year's 25,354. Thank you.
Thank you to Mr. Iskandar and Mr. Nabil for the presentation of the financial statements of the company. Let's proceed our meeting with the presentation of ratio analysis by the financial managers.
Thank you to our CEO for giving me space to present our financial ratio. Let's get started with the liquidity ratio. Liquidity definitely has 3 points: the current ratio, and the quick ratio, and net working capital. So here are the numbers for the current ratio. As we can see, the current ratio shows us that our firm is able to meet its short-term obligation, as the company has 16.3 of current asset to cover every RM of current liabilities. Even though it's quite low, we are still capable of paying the creditors on time. For the quick ratio, the firm has fewer liquid assets to meet its short-term obligation since the quick ratio is below 1. Our firm is still able to cover its short-term obligation and should be treated with caution. Next, for the net working capital, the firm has a negative net working capital, suggesting that it is not liquid at all, and we are not able to pay for the short-term obligation, as we assume that if we have too much net working capital, it is not good because liquid assets do not bring much income, which will create a high opportunity cost. Then let's continue to the profitability ratio, which are 5 ratios to indicate the rate of profitability created on the sales. The first one is gross profit margin. It tells us that our firm generates 56.75% of its gross profit from its sales. There is 57 cents in gross profit from every RM of sales made. The cost of gross sale is high at 43.35% and should be reduced to increase profitability. Next is the operating profit margin. It shows us that our firm operating profits are 25.17%. This indicates that our firm operating expenses before interest and taxes are 17.83% of each ringgit of sales. The third one is net profit margin. Our firm's net profit is positive but quite low at 15.41%. This indicates that for every RM of sales, our firm can generate only 15 cents in net profit as earning available for shareholders. Then come to the return on equity. The return on equity shows that our firm managed to generate only 20 cents in profit for every RM of investment in our firm equity. The final one is return on investment. Our firm is able to generate 6 cents profit for every RM investment in its asset. That's all from me as a financial manager.
Alright, thank you to Mr. Alif. Now I will proceed about the activity ratio. The first one is inventory turnover. From my research, we can say that the firm can roll over its investment by 2.21 times in a year. The inventory management is relatively good, as with RM1 investment in inventory, the firm is able to produce RM2.21 of cost of goods sold. However, the firm should give precaution if inventory turnover higher than average, because it may lead to stock out. The next part is total asset turnover. The company's asset could be used to generate only 4.24 times sales. Every RM1 investment in asset could generate RM4.246. The low ratio indicates the low asset utilization and less productive of investment in asset. Alright, for the next part, I will pass to Mr. Adam to present about the leverage ratio. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you to Mr. Fidaus. Now, moving on now to the leverage ratio for our company in 2020. The first one is the debt ratio for Maxis is 0.59%. The firm obtained 0.59% of its source of financing from debt. The second one is debt to equity ratio. The debt to equity ratio is 58.66%. The firm used less debt than equities as a source of financing. This is not risky since the firm not relies too much on external financing. The third one is long-term debt to equity is 0.04%. The firm use low amount of long-term debt as a source of financing. This is not risky since long-term debt carries low interest rate. The last one is time interest earned is 4.20 times. The firm is able to cover its interest payment by 4.02 per times using its operating income. This shows a high capability of servicing its interest obligation and lower risk of default. Based on calculation of ratio, our company needs to do short-term financing instead of long-term. Thank you, that's all from me.
Thank you to the financial managers. Let's proceed with the bank representatives, Mr. Yazid and Mr. Hafi. Can we proceed with the long-term financing from Untung Bank?
It is a pleasure to meet all of you today. I am Muhammad Yazid, a representative from Untung Bank, and this is Hafi Arif, my partner, which is our bank analyst. It was said that your company is going to invest in esports event and upgrading your service. When your company is able to generate profit, automatically you will be able to pay this loan. I see that there are two chances that this loan will benefit the both of us. Firstly, since you will be the sponsor, the exposure of your company will encourage customers to use Maxis. Secondly, customers do need a good internet connection while playing online games. So, by increasing the connection speed, by increasing your connection speed and expanding the quota limit, this also will increase the demand of your telco users. Next, for my partner.
Yeah, right. Hello, assalamualaikum to everyone. I'm the analyst of the bank, and I believe that it will be beneficial for the company, for your company, to invest in the esports scene. This is because based on the leverage ratio that Mr. Adam has demonstrated, I believe it will have a positive impact on your company, and I also think that it could increase your profit even further. And I've also just now truly examined your leverage ratio. So based on your debt calculation, which is 0.59%, your company does not gain a significant amount of profit from that. And next is your debt to equity ratio is also 58.66%. This indicates that your company is not over risky because it does not rely on external financing. Moreover, your long-term debt to equity is only 0.04. This is good because you barely use long-term debt as your source of funds. And for your long-term debt to equity ratio is also only 0.04%. This indicates that you barely use long-term debt as a source of financing. And finally, with the debt coverage percentage of 4.20 times, your company can easily cover back your debt and your interest. I can conclude that there will be a little risk if you proceed with this project, and it may help you make more money. However, if you want to invest in this esports scene, I don't think you should do a long-term investment. This is because due to the unnatural flow of its relevancy of the esports scene, you cannot confirm how long the esports scene can go. So I would suggest for you to do short-term financing.
I understand. Based on Mr. Hafi and Mr. Yazid's explanation, I understand that our company is suited for a short-term financing. Can we proceed with that?
Okay, but let me discuss with my partner first. So, what do you think we should?
I think we should proceed with the loan because this company seeks all the criteria.
Alright.
But using short-term loans instead of the long-term loans, since we don't know if this sport can last in the longer period.
Alright, then let's send them a confirmation later, but of short-term investment.
Okay then, since your company is able to pay debt in time, we both agree to approve the short-term loan. Approve.
Thank you to our accountants, and thank you to our financial managers, and thank you to the bank representatives from Untung Bank, Mr. Hafi and Mr. Yazid. I will be looking forward to the confirmation letter. That is all for our meeting. Thank you all for coming.